Hello, principals, administrators, and superintendents. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. We're going to try to make this quick. We're going to explain what the formula is, how to install it in your schools. There are a few different options of installation, what the cost is, and how cost effective it is. And I think right now, with everything that's going on in Congress with with TikTok, I think it's very ironic that exactly what we are trying to teach your students to create, which is something called a disruptive innovation, is causing such a stir, and children all over the country are talking about it. I speak to administrators who say that their children are bringing it up and at the dinner table. So I think this is a great time. The irony is that, again, what's happening right now in current events is exactly the focus point of the formula as a STEM package, and hopefully something that you will consider implementing in your schools and throughout your district. For some of the administrators who've listened to some of the other videos that are available on YouTube, you know that the formula is a mixture of entrepreneurship and STEM, a very unique genre of STEM or design engineering called eSTEM, where the E stands obviously for entrepreneurship. And the philosophy is that we are seducing students into the notion of being STEM engineers by giving them the option to create technology, as opposed to simply just doing all the math blindly, which is the way I was taught, and not knowing how to take engineering and make something with it. And that is why mixing entrepreneurship with STEM is such a seductive notion to the students. And it is the end game is to create something called a disruptive innovation, which is only taught at Ivy League schools throughout the country. Disruptive innovations are like economic atomic bombs. They turn engineers into billionaires multiple times over. They destroy industries, rebuild whole new industries in their place, and they're the most feared phenomena in the world of business internationally. Engineers are hired 99% of the times to make them, so this is what the students focus in on when they're in the class. They focus in on two things: one, to make a disruptive innovation, and the other, to create a unicorn company. A unicorn company is just a company that's doing $1 billion in sales in its first year. They're called unicorns because they're rare, and unicorns are usually full of disruptors. All right. Tesla is a very probably one of the most popular examples of a disruptor, and they are the North Star of engineering for the children that go to the Ivy League. So what's happening is that our black and brown children, I'm an African American male. I went to Northeastern University. They never mentioned it, not once, to me. So what's happening is that they're creating a hierarchy of engineers and leaving out the most seductive and coolest part, which is becoming a billionaire and sometimes a trillionaire, like Jim Bezos, the creator of Amazon. And because of that, black and brown children are not going into the field of study because they don't know it exists. It's been hidden in plain sight. And as I said before, what's going on right now in Congress with TikTok is just an example of disruptors fighting against each other. Many people believe Mark Zuckerberg has paid off Congress to put TikTok out of business and ban it, and children across the country are talking about it. But this is just proof of how scary and how terrified people that have gone to Ivy League schools that have been taught what disruptors are how scared they are of disruptors and their power, right? So this is it. It's playing out in cinema, on television, all over the media right now. And our assertion is that this is a purposeful act. I'm an engineer, if I didn't say this before. Engineers are hired to make them. 99.9% of the time, engineers make them. And Northeastern never mentioned it to me. So obviously, going out into the world and finding this out, it was shocking to me. It was upsetting. I felt like I was shortchanged and bamboozled. And that is that's why I'm doing this. I feel like it's unfair, and I'm here to create democratize STEM education for the students that are being left behind. And everyone knows throughout the country that black and brown children are tragically and almost hopelessly outside of the technology, the technology wave, this information revolution that we're in right now. Black and brown children are completely out of it. So the way we're trying to fix it is by mixing entrepreneurship with STEM to the tune of creating disruptors and unicorns, as well as turning the students into CEOs and through entrepreneurship, because the children are watching all of these entrepreneurs in rap music and athletics become multimillionaires, and they don't know that the people that these rappers and athletes are looking up to are these disruptors, like the CEO of TikTok. And so, many people say, well, why should I believe you that this is a purposeful conspiracy to create this hierarchy of class system in technology? And if you just do the research, 90% of all these tech billionaires and trillionaires are white men that have gone to Ivy League schools. This gentleman, the creator of TikTok, did not go to an American Ivy League institution. I just did the research, and I was like, okay, I thought that for a second I was going to be proven wrong. He went to a school called UCL, and if you look up the school UCL, right on the school's homepage, it says thinking and teaching disruptively since, I think it says 1865 or something like that. So since 1865, this school is alleging that it's been indoctrinating its students with the notion of being disruptive. And I mean, it just sort of, ironically proves my point that this is something that's like in the military, they say hide it in plain sight. The notion of what disruptors are and how to make them have been hidden in plain sight even since the 1800s, when this school was UCL was its inception. So again, black and brown children have no idea that this is happening, and to make matters worse, they're disruptors like TikTok that are disrupting the Department of Education. There are new disruptors that are actually disrupting the Department of Education, because a lot of times I've been doing this for 15 years and people say, well, disruptors are not going to bother us. And I'm saying, and now we're seeing that, wait a minute, there are disruptors right in the Department of Education that are giving students the ability to just go online through something called a disruptive technology called virtual intelligence and virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and they don't have to write their papers anymore. They can just plug it into some software package and get the paper done. So disruption is affecting every industry, and it's not something that we can run from anymore. And again, our strategy at Bandit Publishing, we believe that all students deserve to make out bandits financially in this life, not just the offspring of the top 1%. Our strategy with the formula, which is like the Shark Tank for engineers, is to teach students what disruptors are and exactly how to make them, but using very simple engineering tools, which is and disruptors and unicorns are everything that takes place in Silicon Valley, arguably the technology capital of the world. And again, current events, the Silicon Valley Bank has just gone bankrupt and been dissolved or getting backstopped by the federal government. So there's a lot that's going on, and I think this is a perfect time to take action and to provide equity and democracy in STEM for black and brown students. Now, whenever I talk to administrators, I always say, hey, the rappers and athletes are in on this, and they are partnering with these disruptors to make it almost impossible for your students to not pay attention to them. And they know exactly what disruptors are. They're just not telling our children. And I sometimes, well, all the time, accuse them of exacerbating the problem and misguiding black and brown children. And some people say, well, how do you know that? Or they may balk at that and say, how can you be sure that rappers and athletes actually know what disruptors are, and that these Ivy League engineers are educating them and recruiting them to work on their platforms? And to that, I here's some proof. Jay-Z, arguably one of the most prolific rappers of our time, of our decade. This is why he bought the platform, the digital platform Tidal. Tidal is a disruptor. The first wave of disruption that took place in the music industry was by a gentleman named Sean Fanning, who had incidentally attended Northeastern University, as did I, and he created a digital platform to download music called Napster. It destroyed the music industry, put lots of companies out of business, and if you ever watched the movie The Social Network, Justin Timberlake's character is Sean Fanning. They said that he went to an Ivy League school because disruptors are not supposed to come from schools like Northeastern, but the reality is that he attended Northeastern, and he is the one who created all of the downloading through this social platform, music sharing platform that he called Napster. So this is just to prove that rappers and athletes know what disruptors are. They're partnering with them, and this is another reason why schools are outgunned, because these disruptors are powerful. They have engineers that are making them, along with psychologists, to get students emotionally addicted to these social media platforms right on their phones. And to my point and to my argument, that unless we teach students what they are and how to make them, these disruptors will continue to wreak havoc, not just in the Department of Education, but throughout the world. So administrators can install, and principals can install the formula in their schools in 3 different ways. They can use it as an elective class. Many schools, after they've seen the power of it in an after school or summer camp, will bring it in as an elective class, and they will teach it as a STEM class, or what we like to call an incubator. An incubator out in Silicon Valley is just a small company that takes care of a startup company who's on the path of making their disruptor, and nurses them through the process of getting their product, their prototype down, getting their marketing, targeting their target demographic, and they call them an incubator. Or another term for them is called accelerators. So that's what we're doing. You can think of the class as an incubator. You can install it as a class. You can install it as an after-school program. It works really well as a summer camp. We've worked with colleges and STEP, science, technology entry programs, and it's been very successful there. A lot of times colleges have the funding and the wherewithal to really utilize the program and make it, and just the kids get a lot out of it because the college has the resources to right on campus to let it play out. In an after school capacity, that's where we started doing it. You can do it after school for 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, maybe twice or even sometimes three times a week. The only thing there is that you really have to do marketing, and you have to make sure, in my experience, that you have food for the students, because a lot of times when you're in a school where the students, maybe at the poverty line or Title I schools where the kids are getting free and reduced meals, if they're going to stay after school, they're going to need to eat. So we would order pizza for those kids, and as long as they feel like they're having fun and they're being fed and they're learning something, especially when we tell them we're teaching them to make a money machine, or we're taking them to play golf, or whatever we're doing as an activity, but specifically when they realize that they're really learning to start a company, they really have fun doing it. We have to have it works well if there's a computer lab where the kids can do their work and their research on a computer. They can learn about coding. They can do simulations where if they don't have a 3D printer in the class or in the lab, there's software that they can actually make their products online and learn about engineering, drawing. I mean, we can do a lot of really cool things, but those are the 3 installation methods: as an elective class during the day for high school students, as a after school program, or as a summer camp, or you can, if you really want to be aggressive, you can use it in all 3 of those options simultaneously. Now, quickly, if you're just looking at this for the first time, just to go over some of the academic content, we have 220 digital lesson plans so that it's not such a heavy lift for the teacher. The teacher, just like in this format, you'll hear me, explaining the content so that the teachers don't have to be afraid that they have to learn something new. That later on we'll see that that's one of the risk factors. Sometimes teachers feel like it's too much for them. So we have these lesson plans. They're 45-minute time frames, so you can use them during the day as an elective class, as we said earlier, or you can use one or two of them if you are in an after school or a summer camp capacity. It's sort of plug and play, open source. What I mean by that is that you can tailor it to say, hey, I want to be heavy on the design engineering, or I want to be heavy on the marketing and advertising, or the investment banking, or the writing of business plans. You can really focus it and say, Mr. Powell, we really need to improve our writing skills and our leadership, and we would together create a syllabus and cut through the 220 lesson plans to focus in on exactly what you'd like to achieve in the academic and social emotional improvements that you'd like to see take place in your school. So we're number 3 here. We have design engineering in all genres of engineering, meaning that we're going to simplify all genres of engineering, not just the way I was taught, where you just hold somebody down in mechanical engineering and test them and so hard and so abstractly on it. And a lot of the engineering teachers that I've spoken with across the country will say, yeah, that's the way they taught us, and that's why I dropped out. I can't tell you how many administrators that were in engineering that dropped out have agreed with me that this is what they do, and that's why they've said, hey, I dropped out because of exactly what you're speaking of. So we draw a common theme through all genres of engineering, whether it's mechanical, electrical, civil, or biomedical. I was electrical, and I know they did this to me. Marketing and advertising there's a big component of that. There's value-based investment, banking, and financial literacy. The gentleman who, the CEO of TikTok, he worked in the investment banking sector of, I believe it was Morgan Stanley, or I just read his bio, but he's not an engineer. He just went to a school that basically programmed him, as I said, about disruption, and he probably hired a bunch of engineers to create TikTok for him, but he had the vision and understanding, because when these disruptors go public, they have to defend their valuation. So him working in the investment banking world gave him the ability to negotiate something called an IPO, so that when his company went public, he became a billionaire that day. And that's all about financial literacy, but you have to understand valuations. None of the other financial literacy programs that I know of are even discussing what valuations are. They're teaching the students how to balance a checkbook, and that's very important too. But understanding what valuation is critically important, because engineers create the value and then salespeople sell it, and the value is the disruptor. Business plan writing is a very big part of it, and the kids can participate in business plan writing competitions throughout the country where they could win cash and prizes, and that becomes a very big incentive to them to actually work hard and apply themselves, because sometimes they could win $100,000 in for their business plans and get money to start their actual company, to go to college while they're in college, which is very in vogue. So that's a very big incentive for the students, and that's one of the risk factors. If the students don't feel like they have something exciting to work forward to, sometimes it's hard to get them to really focus in. But if they feel like they're going to win some sort of money or some sort of prize, they and their parents will actively and aggressively participate in the class. There's a very big, strong history component. We have vocabulary building, engineering as far as math, modeling, logic, and units of measurement. The students learn to reverse engineer different great inventors of the past and present, almost like transcribing the thought process of innovation. So we're basically teaching the students how to think like a disruption-minded engineer. These are just some of the academic content that your student will be drilled on if we're fortunate enough to work with your school. Now, here are some of the risk factors. If you don't market the program correctly, if you don't tell the student that we're teaching them to make a money machine, if you tell them it's engineering, they're going to run for the hills, because engineering is for the nerds. But if you tell them we're teaching them, in our experience, to make a money machine and they could win cash and prizes, you'll have a tidal wave of students and their parents forcing them to participate in the class. Another risk factor is, teachers. Sometimes teachers see this as something else they have to learn after they've been in the class all day, and they may not want to participate because they don't want the extra work. So making sure that the teachers are compensated and that it's a teacher maybe that is excited about something like this because they may want to learn it themselves is something that takes risk out of this academic model. Lack of parental involvement. So to combat that, we give the students a book, a soft cover book for the parents, and an audio book for themselves. And a lot of times what we've seen is that the parents will take the book and read it, and that will help them to become active participants in the class. Lack of incentive, we talked about before, the business plan writing competition. Lack of administrative oversight. Lack of food for the after school program or the summer camp. The kids are hungry. If they're hungry and they're starving, no matter how much they want to be in the class, they may just say, hey, there's no food, I'm not going to come. Lack of appearance by the creator of the formula to the students, virtually or in person, meaning me. If I have to be there, the students are going to buy into me. The first rule of sales says people buy you, and then they buy the product you're selling. And that's never more apparent than in this class. The kids are going to want to know who created this, and when they realize that somebody who looks like them, which I have a certain cultural currency with black and brown students because I am an African American male. Once they hear my story and they see me and I show up and I dial in or come into the class and make appearances, they start to believe that this guy really cares for us. He knows what he's talking about. He's lived it. They listen to me reading the audiobook to them on their laptops, and they feel comfortable that they're learning from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, and most importantly is not going to abandon them. And that's a very big part of it. So these are some of the risk factors that going in could affect the success of the program. So why should you do it? What's in it for your school? Well, and when I come into some schools, you'll see that they'll say, well, we have a robotics program, or we have Project Lead the Way, or Nifty, and none of these programs even know what a disruptor is. First of all, if they do know, they're not telling the masses of students. But what we can do is, if a lot of the schools that have these programs, I say, well, how many kids are actively participating in the program? And they'll say, well, 5%. And I'll say, well, do you really think that's successful? I mean, in this digital age, information age we're in, we need every student to understand how technology is going to affect the industry that they're going to work in. So we can, using entrepreneurship, turn those numbers around from 5% to 90 to 100%, because what kid, or what adult even for that matter, once they find out that this is real, doesn't want to learn how to make a money machine in their home? And I mean, it's almost a no-brainer, right? Leadership skills development, all of these things, time management, decreased violence. This is as much of an etiquette class because of the entrepreneurship component as it is a STEM engineering class, because we're teaching students first, people have to buy into you and your behavior, and then they're going to buy the product that they're selling. So because it's so rigorous, we can increase grades across the board in reading, writing, math. The students start to really see that if I'm going to model myself, and my role models are now going to be these great entrepreneurs, even the ones that have dropped out of their Ivy League schools after they created their disruptor, what they don't know is that these entrepreneurs didn't drop out until they had their disruptors already created and already ready. They had them funded. So the kids just hear that Mark Zuckerberg or these people dropped out of college. They don't know that they dropped out when they had a disruptor ready to go. They don't know that. So we can dispel that myth, put them on a path to going to college and developing those relationships, civic involvement, all of these things. You can't get the students to practice when you're just teaching them traditional math, reading, and writing. But when you mix the entrepreneurship in there, then we can get all of these other additional values for your school and for the school's community, because we're giving the students the ability to exercise these skills in and outside of the classroom. And again, just to reiterate, these are the things that your school would get: the 220 digital lesson plans, the ebook, the audio book, the year-long teacher training and support. These are these are all the materials that are included when you hire us and hopefully implement the formula in your school, whether you're doing it as an after-school program, as a summer camp, or as an actual elective class. This is what the school gets. Now, one of the characteristics of being a disruptor is that you are giving the masses a product that could only usually be afforded to the wealthy, right? And what disruptors do is that they create a better product that's a lot cheaper, like a Rolls Royce as an example, for the price of a Toyota or a Honda Accord, the lowest level, and now everyone can have the same thing that the wealthy can have. And the behavior of a disruptor is that by the time these companies that are used to selling their expensive products to a very small sector of society at a very high price find out that there's a disruptor that has recreated or created a better product than the one that they're selling and giving it to all the people that originally couldn't afford it, by the time the big company, who's very wealthy, Fortune 500 company, finds out and turns around to figure out that there's a young, aggressive disruptor eating up all of their customers, it's too late. And that's what we are trying to do. That's exactly what we are trying to do. So we compete with Project Lead the Way and other programs that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are $15,000, which is more than 80% less than our competitors, and that is all you can eat. All of the products and services that are mentioned in the other slides you get for $15,000 year-long support. What we do not include, which you might want to think about, is the food. And if you want to take the students to play golf or any outings, some schools I hear are taking kids to Silicon Valley, which is an amazing trip. Those things are usually not included, but the teacher training and support, all of the books, the soft cover, the ebook, and the audiobook are all included, and the coming in and guest appearances, that is all for $15,000 right now, because again we want to make sure that we democratize the notion of STEM for the people that ordinarily could not afford it. And that's why we believe that this is a necessity. They say that by the year 2057, because of advancements in robotics and artificial intelligence, which is a very popular STEM category in the public schools, they say that the average earnings in the black community is going to go to zero. So the irony there is that a lot of schools say, hey, we don't need your STEM program, we have robotics already, not knowing that they are literally putting the demographic that they're trying to educate out of business. And that's why we believe that this is important, this is coming, if it's not already here. And we believe that, and not even what we believe, what we've seen is that this is a way to drastically turn the numbers and this deficiency in the black community as far as STEM is concerned, to turn those numbers 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And I'm hopeful that you will give us an opportunity to work with you and your school and your students. Thank you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening.